Good morning. This is Faith in Our Hometown, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin. And now, here's your host, Father Jay Friedel.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us for Faith in Our Hometown this Sunday morning. I hope you're having a great day so far. I certainly am. What I will say to you is that I always, sometimes people question me, where do you get the ideas for your shows? Well, again, if you got ideas for us or things that you think the community needs to talk about, why don't you get in contact with us and let us know. I happened to be doing a visit to one of our jails, actually the one in Carthage, the other day. And as I was there, I ran into someone who said, I'm kind of involved with this group that I think that, you might do well to talk to and learn a little bit more about what we do. And so the result was my contacting Starting Point Outpatient Services. And so my guest this morning is going to be Kelly Young, who's the founder of that particular group. And we're going to be talking a little bit what they do in terms of their outreach to people who happen to need their services. So we're going to be right back after this Mercy Minute. Stick around, and I'll be right back with Kelly Young in just a moment.
I have arthritis in my knees, and it was just excruciating. I wish I would have done something sooner. I found myself not able to go up and down stairs, which is bad because we realized we were going to have to sell our house. We decided just to take the worst one first, and we did. I was back to work in 6 weeks. 6 months later, I had surgery on the second one, and I'm back to work in 5 weeks. And I was a little scared, a little apprehensive, even though I knew everything that was going to happen. But I was just impressed. Life is short, and I waited. I think I waited too long.
Well, again, thanks for being with us for another Sunday morning. My guest this morning is going to be Kelly Young, who's the founder of Starting Point Outpatient Services. And so I happened to meet your volunteer that one day, but nobody else out here knows what you do. So tell us a little bit about Kelly, and then tell us a little bit about Starting Point Outpatient Services.
I moved back here about 20 years ago. I'm in recovery, in long-term recovery myself.
Okay.
And so Starting Point was started because I thought that there needed to be some more things happening in this area, not just Joplin, but in the surrounding areas, for addiction.
Okay.
Substance abuse addiction, gambling addiction, and so then I opened up Starting Point Outpatient Services.
Okay.
And so
that's what the result yourself was. You went through a situation, you knew what you needed, and you thought there could be some more help given, and so you just stepped up to fill the need.
Yes.
Good for you.
Yes.
Okay. And people have been benefiting for how many years now because you stepped up to fill that need?
Well, I've been in the field for a long time, but we've been open since 2015.
Okay.
Since January
All right.
2015.
All right. So in terms of that, so what kind of things do you do just in general for your clients?
In general, well, we do a lot of things.
Okay. Yeah.
Sometimes our days will be really long. We'll take a client for crisis intervention. We'll take them to the hospital for detox. We will drive them to their probation officer, to any food banks or any type of services that's available.
Right.
We'll walk them through resumes and take them to get clothing for interviews and that kind of stuff.
So basically, just any kind of support that person who's dealing with recovery needs, you're going to try to help.
Yeah, we take a holistic approach. We don't know who's going to come in, nor do we turn anybody away.
Okay.
So we kind of set the standard by, they come in and, we do the assessment, of course.
Sure.
But we also do a peer support assessment. That's one of the things about our program that's I think above the rest is that we have peer supports, and they'll take them to, whether it's a meeting, whether it's to find a new church, we will take them out into the community, integrate them into the community so that they can learn how to live
sure.
again.
Yeah. So in terms of that, one of the things we were talking a little bit about earlier, which I found really big. You're one of the you always mention the fact that you help with those addiction, especially of all kinds. And one of the ones that you mentioned was gambling addiction.
Yes.
We don't hear about about that one a lot. We certainly hear more about drugs and alcohol, which I think people have can wrap their brain around. But really, one of the growing segment of addictions, would be folks who've got a gambling addiction. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, a gambling addiction is kind of a different. It's still addiction.
Sure, right.
But it's what they call the silent addiction.
Okay.
You can't see it, like you would be able to see somebody that is suffering from alcoholism or something. You can tell maybe financially.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things. It's hard to get that information out to the community as far as what's available. I think there's maybe a couple of counselors in the Joplin area that are available.
Mm-hmm.
But right now I think it's kind of like peer support. Like how we serve the gambling addiction is counseling, of course,
right.
And then peer support. Getting them out to meetings and stuff like that. We provide a
group for
on,
those who aren't aware, there's a Gamblers Anonymous the same way that there's an Alcohol Anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's it's basically a 12-step kind of recovery program.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any inpatient groups that would deal with Gamblers Anonymous?
No, unfortunately, if you're a veteran, there's one in Ohio.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And that shows you how, in some ways, how much of a need there is to help people to deal with the issue,
Mm-hmm.
even though the resources are not quite as plentiful as there would be for the other types of addictions.
Yeah. Yes, and so some of the clients that we've had have actually started a couple of Gamblers Anonymous groups in the area,
Mm-hmm.
and so one of those groups are held at our center on Tuesday nights. So that's something that's kind of starting to grow. It looks like there's more people coming. I think probably gambling is hard to grasp as an addiction because you're not putting anything in your body.
Yeah,
And so,
and it's so hard, but the same way that people will lose their perspective. That's what
Mm-hmm.
can so happen often when people are in the throes of the grip of addiction, is they lose all their perspectives. So people
Mm-hmm.
are betting, people are losing their house payments and their ability to
Yeah.
provide for themselves or their families, or go into huge amounts of debt, or sometimes stealing money the same way that they would use to provide for an addiction to drugs or alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the gamblers will steal in order to have money to, gamble
yes.
and to do those things. And so it is. One of my friends who does, addiction counseling, in the St. Louis area, he'll talk about sometimes that the gambling addiction is sometimes very hard to break because the cycle. Because there's always the possibility that you might win.
Right.
Whereas with drugs or alcohol, you get to a point where there's no return. There is no, there's nothing good going to come out of it.
Right.
It's just going to be more wear and tear on the body, more wear and tear on health, more wear and tear. But the problem with the gambling addiction is that the gambler keeps going forward, and every once in a while wins and says, "Oh, see, look, I told you, I could solve it all by doing the gambling." And so it's even harder to break because you're never going to be able to look at the results that a drug addict would have and say, oh, look, you got a positive outcome. But sometimes the gambler can see, oh, look, I did have a positive outcome. This time I won.
But there does come a point when it doesn't look like that.
Yeah, exactly, and that's
So-
why it's so hard for that one to break. And again, I don't think anybody's talking here when we speak of gambling addiction. For any of you that are not familiar with compulsive behaviors, excuse me, for gambling addiction, it's one of those situations again, true compulsion, that they've lost the power to control that, and the situations become unmanageable in their lives to such a degree that they need assistance in order to help out of that. So we're not talking about somebody who just goes over and plays bingo one night and then goes home
Right.
and that's it. You know, we're not talking about somebody who goes out to the casino the one night for social, a social outlet or whatever. We're talking about somebody who feels the compulsion to do it and to do it all the time and to their own detriment,
Yes.
where it's actually really causing definitive problems in their lives because of the gambling.
Yes.
And so we're talking about a completely different creature here rather than just somebody, grandma or Aunt Tilly who wants to go to the casino, on Saturday night because that's their favorite social outlet. We're not talking about that. We're actually talking about a compulsion that's causing major issues in a person's life, correct?
Yes, the criminal, there's all kinds of things that happen with the gambling addiction, and that is that the compulsion is so great that it can lead to loss of family, loss of finances, prison.
Yeah.
And
and
then ultimately, the sad thing is that, it's the suicide rate with gamblers is right below veterans.
Yeah. And again, we don't want to lose any more people to an illness, even if it's one that people don't understand very well. We don't want to lose more people to illnesses than we have to.
Right.
So part of the deal there is, so how would you, like, say, for example, how would somebody who thought that they needed your assistance to do their recovery work and to stay well and to do all that stuff, how would they get in touch with you?
We have a Facebook site. Of course,
Okay.
you can message privately. I also have an email on that, and also they can call or come in to Starting Point.
Yeah.
So everything's private.
And I think we got a slide maybe to go with that in terms of the numbers and everything. We want to put those there. This is the phone number there, 417-553-0043. There we go, 0043. That's right up there on the screen, so you can always do that. And there is the email address, okay? And so anybody that's looking for the help with those services might be able to use either that phone number or that address there to get in touch with Starting Point. So say I call you, say I'm dealing with my addiction issues, and I decide to call you. So what can I expect when I call?
An immediate appointment, free of charge.
Okay.
So-
And so free of charge, that's good. Okay,
Yeah.
that somebody's doing. So how do you guys get funded?
We work really hard, do lots of fundraisers, and we are also funded by federal U.S. courts and by the state.
Okay, so you guys assist people in terms of making these differences in their lives and helping them move forward in ways that make positive differences.
Yes.
Yeah. So in terms of that, Kelly, I call and I get this appointment, and then you help do that assessment. Now you mentioned assessment, I'm sure, by a healthcare professional to some degree, probably, and then you also mentioned the peer assessment.
Yeah,
Okay.
the peer assessment is, in addiction or, that way of living, you kind of lose yourself. You kind of forget how to work and forget how to pay bills and forget how to, there's a lot of things that we forget how to do when
So
we're out
life
there.
skills.
So
Yeah.
we're going through, a lot of people don't have an ID or a birth certificate, and so we're helping them get those things. We're helping them get transportation.
Okay.
So
Well, my guest this morning is Kelly Young, who's the founder of Starting Point Outpatient Services, a group that helps people who are trying to make positive choices in their lives, recovering from addiction. So we are going to be right back this after a quick break. This is Faith in Our Hometown, so warm up that coffee and stay tuned.
You're watching Faith in Our Hometown on KSN TV, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.
Well, again, thanks for being with us for another Sunday morning at Faith in Our Hometown. My guest this morning, Kelly Young, who's the founder of Starting Point Outpatient Services, and they are assisting people in the process of recovery, especially from addictions. So, in terms of that, Kelly, tell me about just some of your great successes lately. What do you feel the best about in the last few weeks? In terms of the work that you've been able to do with people? Because I think stories are sometimes what moves some of our viewers, So what do you feel
I have
good
a
about?
lot of great stories. Some of them I can't share because they're about
Well,
clients,
right.
but I do.
But I'm just saying. Well, I'm just saying. Obviously, change names or whatever. But you can, yeah. Mhm.
Yes. I mean, we have a couple of clients that just got their kids back.
Okay.
They've been successful, for a period of time. Became employed, started attending their church again, and going to meetings and doing what they're supposed to be doing. So they just got their kids back.
That's
and
amazing.
It's a loving and great environment.
Yeah. And so, how long were they separated from their kids?
Probably about a year.
Wow. And so again, there's a terrific success story.
Yes.
That would make you want to go to work in the morning, knowing that that you might going to have some success with somebody who struggled and almost let it all go down the tubes.
Yeah.
Now is able to make enough positive choices in their life and work on their recovery well enough and successfully enough that they can get their kids back after they've been in foster care for a while, huh? Or with other family members or something. But but for them to be able to do that is amazing.
See, and that's the big stuff. But there's so many. I mean, the greatest thing to watch is somebody come in and they're broken, and as they begin to recover and they begin to build their life back up again, is that you can actually see it in their face. Their muscles change and their walk becomes a little bit more mellow, and they start to feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
And
you can read brokenness in a person.
yes.
When they feel broken, it shows.
Yes.
Body, mind, spirit, the whole thing. When one part's broken down or beat down, the rest of it kind of follows suit, in so many ways. Mm-hmm. And so you start to see that person start to heal and put those pieces together again. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's probably the best part.
Yeah.
Right there. The gift that we get, that work. I think everybody is, my team is so great. Like, everybody has some experience with addiction and recovery.
Sure.
And
Which
so,
is those usually the ones that make the best recovery workers.
Yeah.
Trust me. Yeah.
And so we work hard, for the client. So we just moved. I don't know when you got, when you found out about Starting Point, but anyway, we just moved into a bigger building. And so we're pretty excited about that.
Good. Where are you located?
We are located now at 501 South Pennsylvania.
Okay. So right here in Joplin.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do you have a service region? I mean, are you responsible for just, like, say, Jasper, Newton counties, or further than that, or what do you do? Who do you have?
Jasper, Newton, McDonald, and I mean, we'll go out of our way, really.
Okay, so you're not restricted on who you can take care of.
Right.
Right. So if somebody needs your services,
we're gonna go get them.
We're gonna go figure it out. Good.
Yep.
Well, and I love that part. I really do, because I mean, I sometimes. And I know we got to have rules, and we got to have some boundaries, and we got to, work within the scope of what our practice needs to be. But I love the fact that, in my conversations with you, I love the fact that you're just like, well, whatever, we'll just go take care of it. We'll help them figure it out. We'll help them go do it. And you're very pragmatic in that regard, which I love, I said, again, when you're helping somebody rebuild the pieces, put the pieces together, it's you need somebody who's willing to say, oh, I'm sorry, well, we can't help you get your ID. No, if that's what you need, all right, we'll help you figure it out,
Yeah, there's no barriers at Starting Point.
Yeah, which is great, so I'm glad. So, and that's how you were founded, and so that's the work that you do,
Yes.
In terms of your, say none of our viewers really know much about addiction and recovery. What do they need to know, just in a general way, in terms of we use those terms real easily, recovery. So what does that mean in a person's life who's had alcohol or drugs or sexual addictions or gambling addictions or whatever it happens to be? How do people go about the business of recovery? What does that mean?
Recovery, it means changing the addiction, becoming abstinent from the chains that hold you down. It's about figuring out kind of where it came from, because we don't just become addicted. There's something. Most people have something that's happened in their lives, or something that they grew up with, or some kind of a traumatic event or something. And so getting into the deeper parts of that, and learning how to let that stuff go, and sometimes use it for the good, of helping someone else. and then continuing the path, finding the social support that you need, becoming employed, becoming a productive member of society, somebody that can give, or find themselves again.
Yeah. And again, that's for each person. It's definitely a personal journey. It has to be according to what each person has been through, and also what that person needs. But that's the process of recovery, and you never get to stop, do you?
No.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't mind.
Just continues.
Yeah, I don't mind. As they say, this is probably the most important thing is giving back. Is being able to serve the community. And find ways to help anybody anybody that is seeking recovery. Yeah.
And, a person, I think, isn't that the 12th step, pretty much?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, turning it around to, so that you're kind of in some ways paying it forward, helping other people in the same process.
Yes.
Which is part of the beauty of the whole thing. And I think when anybody gets to that point, it's always a true blessing, when somebody gets to the point where they can say, okay, I've been through this enough, I've practiced enough, I've got some confidence now again, I got my feet under me again a little bit. Part of my recovery today is helping somebody else to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's when people step forward and become sponsors. That's when people, I guess, organize, volunteer for an organization like yours, Do you have a significant core of volunteers with your program?
I have volunteers that come in, but I have a really awesome team, and it's just 5 of us. I have a mental health provider that comes in, but I mean we are just on target, like we.
Well, you have to be if you're dealing with a large population. How many clients do you all serve? Just at a given point in time.
A month, I would say about 75 clients.
Okay.
And
So
sometimes
5,
more.
Yeah. Well, it just depends on who's new in the pipeline, I guess. How long do you typically have a tendency to serve a particular client?
I don't like to put a time limit.
Got it.
Simply because some people, they might be having a hard time, maybe have relapsed, and they don't need, 6 months of treatment. They need to get reconnected, with their faith, or reconnected with their meeting. Whatever direction that they need to follow. But we kind of have an open door policy. Like, even if you graduate, you can still come and hang out and read books and hang out with the peer supports and attend a group. Like, we don't have a closed door. Like, once you graduate, you're done. We just don't do that.
Well, that would be pretty dangerous for a person in recovery to say, I'm done. Because I think that for all of us, one of the great wisdom moments of the 12-step tradition is to realize that each day's a new day, and you're in it for that day. And you may not be able to see completely the long road, but you can certainly know that today's in front of you, and that's what you get to put in front of you for your work for the day.
Yes.
It's today's today, and I'm going to go do it today. I think there's a certain wisdom in living in that moment, rather than not living in the past, not living in the future, but living in the here and now. Right. And I think that's one of the beauties of 12-step work and recovery.
Yes.
There's a lot of wisdom there, And again, I think that it's important that especially people who've walked the walk for a while are able to walk with some of those other people who do that. Yeah. So, how might any of our listeners help? What do you think that just people who are just out there just watching this on a Sunday morning, what can they do to help people in recovery?
To help people in recovery?
Yeah.
Don't stigmatize them.
Okay. Meaning don't put a label on them and just shove them off in a corner by themselves.
Right.
Make them feel bad about what
Send them to me.
There you go.
Send them to me.
Send them to
We will
starting
help
point.
them.
Yeah, so there's help out there. Again, we might want to flash those numbers up one more time, and the address. Yep. So we'll put those up there on the screen for everybody to look at real quick. But also in terms of not stigmatizing people, what else can our listeners do to make sure that they're helping people in recovery?
Just learn about addiction, because I think part of the issue is that sometimes there is a stigma because people don't really know what addiction is, why people do the things that they do, and it's hard to understand it as a disease or as a brain issue. And so I think the more that people understand or learn, or I mean, you can Google it, as far as that goes, to find out what addiction is, and definitely don't enable somebody, especially if you're a family member.
Yeah, you can't just say, oh, that's okay with me either. You want to say, no, that's not okay. What's okay is if you're going to try and get better and work at it, but not just go do what you're going to do. Yeah. All right, well, my guest this morning, again, has been Kelly Young, who's the founder of Starting Point Outpatient Services, helping members in our community recover from addictions. And it really doesn't matter what the addiction is, whether it's gambling, alcohol, drugs, relationships, sex, whatever it happens to be. You guys stand ready to help anybody in the recovery process. We're going to be right back after this Mercy Minute. Don't go away.
In Ireland, the first Sisters of Mercy were called the Walking Sisters because every day they went out in search of women and children who needed healing or help. Mercy continues to answer the same call, dedicated to the health of every woman who comes to us for care. Mercy, in every era, your life is our life's work. Learn why we serve at mercy.net/legacy. When they discovered there was no hospital, the Sisters of Mercy built one, as they had so many times before, offering healing and hope on the edge of the frontier. Mercy continues to answer the same call, to bring care wherever you or your child need it most. Mercy, in every era, your life is our life's work. Learn why we serve at mercy.net/legacy.
Well, again, thanks for joining us for another Sunday morning. I'm still absolutely amazed after all these years that y'all still tune in on a Sunday morning. I love hearing from you. I love meeting you in the grocery store. I love talking with you about what's going on in life. And I love your ideas about what we can do or ideas for shows. So get in contact with us and let us know. My guest this morning was Kelly Young, who's the founder of Starting Point Outpatient Services. Let's face it, we have brothers and sisters in our community who suffer with addictions, and the best time we can work with them and rejoice with them is when they start recovering from those addictions and start making healthy choices for themselves again. Sometimes they need a little bit of support along the way so that they can continue to make healthy choices for themselves and the people that they love. That's what people like Starting Point Outpatient Services are for. We need to be attentive to our brothers and sisters who are in recovery and do all that we can in order to help them to continue to make those good choices. Join us again next week for Faith in Our Hometown. God bless. Happy Sunday.
Thanks for watching. Faith in Our Hometown can be seen Sunday mornings at 6:30 and 9 a.m. on KSN. Brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.